Okay, everyone, welcome to week 4 of Creative Presentation. Congratulations to you all. You've made it through your first official month at Full Sail. It's a fast pace. It's a lot to get used to in a very short amount of time. I feel like I get to know you guys, and then boom, you're off into your next course, which this time next week, you're going to be starting your second month at Full Sail. So really, you kind of just get into the groove of things and you start just running full speed ahead, but you're working very well. And I'm really loving the first drafts of the final presentation that I'm seeing so far this week. Okay, so before we get started though, I talked about this a little bit with James prior to the recording, but it is Florida, it is 6 p.m. and it means it's thunderstorm time. So the thunder and the lightning are right above my head, so you might be hearing a lot of crashing and things like that. I hope I don't lose power. So in the situation or in the instance that I do lose power, guys, don't worry. I've got prior week 4 recordings that I will post to you guys. So if something happens and I lose power, unfortunately, there's just nothing I can do about that. So if it happens, I'll handle it and we can figure out maybe an additional go-to session later on in the week if we need to talk and just bounce ideas back and forth, or if you need clarification on anything. So I just wanted to kind of preface that. Right now, Andrew is saying that the weather is horrible in Georgia. I think it's just summertime and all these storms are just heading through and it is just hot. So all of that combined, I just wanted to let you know if I lose you, it's not on purpose. I didn't just cut you off. It's because I lost power. So before we move into the items for tonight, it's going to be a shorter night. I'm really going to talk about the week 4 assignments and just kind of leave it open to you guys in case you have any questions or want me to clarify anything. I want to give you an ample amount of time to chat with me or just your classmates as well towards the end here. But as we move, towards the end of the class, just remember, just in general, guys, online learning is tough, and I know this. I'm still kind of adapting. I'm coming from a very different environment, the face-to-face learning environment, and moving to online. And I'm sure many times you guys feel at times you're confused or you're lost or you just don't know where you fit in to the environment. Just keep in mind that you're surrounded by people that really want you to succeed. And you've got a lot of resources out there, but you just need to learn how to continue to tap into those resources and be the one that's proactive about reaching out to them and reaching out to your instructors and the tech support and your fellow classmates as well. Just be sure you continue to do that. But keep in mind also that every instructor is going to be different, and especially in CRP, as the first month instructors, the majority of us really, we're very understanding that you're still getting acclimated and this is new for a lot of people, but not all the instructors are going to be as lenient and, especially with due dates and things like that. So just keep that in mind. Every instructor is going to be different, very different styles of teaching and communicating. So just keep that in mind as you move into your next month, which many of you will be doing this time next week. All right. So I want to just kind of give a second and talk about this time that you've spent here in creative presentation and some of the things that you can really reflect on. And this will actually come into play later in an assignment that you have due this week. But I want to just talk about, and if you want to open up the microphones, I'm happy to do that and just unmute you if you want to talk to us or just share with us in the chat box. What is it that you really were expecting from this creative presentation course? And do you think that you've met those expectations thus far? What's your biggest takeaway from the course? So think about a couple of those, just a couple of those prompts. Think about those questions. If you'd like to share with us, I'd love to hear from you. If it's in the chat box, that's fine. If you want to raise your hand and talk, I would love that too. Just kind of reflect over the last couple of weeks and think about how far you've come with your work and the things that you've accomplished, and did you meet the expectations of this course? So I'll just kind of be quiet for a moment and see if there's anybody that would like to interact here. I would love to hear from you. And I absolutely invite you, if you haven't talked over the microphones, to just push yourself a little bit also and do that tonight if you have the ability to do so. So I'll just be quiet for a moment and wait for you guys. Okay, Isaac, thank you for sharing. So you said you broke out of your comfort zone and you believe you have met some of the expectations. And I agree with that. I think the comfort zone thing, I think a lot of us can relate to, Isaac, and everyone else, that, this class really does kind of push you a little bit farther, especially with that emotional storytelling assignment and working with your voice. For some, that was really, something that maybe you've never thought about before. So thank you for sharing that, Isaac. Andrew's saying you're very grateful and that you were pushed to use your voice. Your comfort zone was bypassed and you're thankful for it. So, yes, Andrew, same thing about using that power of your voice and pushing you through some of the assignments to do that. So, I definitely encourage you both to continue doing that. Obviously, this is not going to be the last class where you're using presentation skills. There's going to be a lot of that throughout your course and time here at Full Sail. So, if there's anyone else that would like to share, I would love to hear from you. Ben, I'm coming to you. I see your hand up. Hey, Ben.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually thank you. I back when I attempted college back in '03 and just wasn't ready for it and didn't have the focus for it, I took speech class. I did decent in it, but one thing I always lacked was ability to really make a cohesive presentation. Like I've always felt decently comfortable, speaking in public and whatnot, and just kind of being myself and kind of winging it. And so I got by.
Mhm.
But this has really taught me to structurally come up with a cohesive, moving, powerful presentations while still like having the chance to use, the skills that we learned here about being genuine and being honest and being ourselves. And it's nice to be able to combine being yourself and realizing that that can be powerful as long as you combine it with the skills we've learned to actually, have an appropriate message and the appropriate content. And I'm kind of rambling. It was a lot clearer in my head right before I said it. So,
No, I
but
think
I
you
guess
clearly
basically
communicated it. Thank you.
I just wanted to, yeah, to thank you for that, to give me these skills. And I know this last week is going to push me even more in the reading I've been doing. I realized that when I made my presentation last night, I'm like, I am not very good at the visual part of this. I'm used to really boring, growing up with all these boring, slideshows and the overheads and all that. And so I'm hoping this week with your feedback and my other classmates that will really help to push me to make something a lot more dynamic and something that can really catch people's eyes. And I hope I can help the rest of my classmates as well.
Yeah, that's great. Ben, I think you made a really good point there with not really, when you went through, like you said, speech class back in '03, kind of winging it. I think a lot of us tend to wing this particular skill. And I think that a lot of us don't really know about and appreciate all of the prep work and behind the scenes work that it really does take to make an effective presentation. Only, there's only a small percentage of the actual delivery, but a huge percentage is going into that background work and the shifts and the changes and the feedback and all in the research and all of that. So I think that's a great reflection. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. And then James is saying, putting together this branding yourself project. I'm used to face to face. Yes, definitely. And when putting this together, I sound very nervous doing this. So it really pushed me out of my comfort zone, but gave me a better view putting myself out there. Nice reflection, James. I think so. I think a lot of it is just, having the courage and the vulnerability to put yourself out there, your true authentic self, and put that into your work and it really coming back and showing a great product. So I think you guys are definitely on the right track. Obviously, we still have this last week to really reflect and grow from the feedback that I'll be giving you and your classmates will be giving you as well. So really it's not the final week. It is the final week, but really there's a lot of growth that also happens in this week as well. So we're going to move on and talk about what's left. And there's not much left, but there are some essential pieces that we need to complete this week before you guys move on to your next class. So here's a snapshot of the week 4 assignments. As you can see, everything is due this Sunday, which is July 30th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you need to be sure that you've completed all of these assignments here. And then you have one more additional assignment that isn't listed, but it's kind of a recap of the course, if you will, and I'll show that to you in a bit. It does affect your professionalism score. So right now we're doing the 4.1 go-to training. And if you're watching live, that's great. Thank you guys for doing that and taking some time out of your day to attend the session live. If you're watching it recorded, that's fine too, but be sure you go in there and that you've checked that you have watched the go-to session. Okay, so you need to be sure you do that. The 4.2 is going to be your reading activity. That's due on July 30th, and I'll go into these next three items in much more detail. The 4.3 assignment is a presentation feedback. It's worth 10% of your grade, and a lot of students a lot of students actually tend to forget this one because they're so focused on the 4.4 final presentation. So I'm going to say this multiple times. I'll probably send out a few reminders as we move into the end of the week. Be sure to do this one. It is worth 10% of your grade. And then lastly, of course, is the 4.4 brand yourself final submission of the presentation. All right, guys. So Tanisha's saying she's having an error message saying the audio is not connected. Can you guys still hear me? Am I still coming through? If someone can answer me in the chat box. Yes, thank you, Ben. Okay. Tanisha, you might just need to watch the recorded version if you're having some difficulty on your end. All right, so I'm going to run through these assignments here. So we're going to start with the 4.2 learning activity and resonate. This is your final chapter here. It's going to be chapter 8. It's called There's Always Room for Improvement. So you just need to make one quick post talking about the most interesting thing that you've learned from this last chapter in chapter 8. And another interesting item from either of the two books, Resonate or Slidology, all right? And then also tell us how you plan on using these interesting, helpful items in the future, all right? So that's your week 4.2 assignment with your reading. So moving on to the 4.3. Again, guys, put a reminder in your calendar, whatever you need to do, jot it down on a sticky note, whatever your style is, make sure you complete this one because it is worth 10% of your grade. All right, so there are going to be instructions and a grading rubric included here. I'm actually going to veer away from the grading rubric. This is going to be more of a pass-fail assignment, and I'll go over the grading criteria in a moment, but I am not using the grading rubric that is included here. But the instructions are going to apply to you. So let's go over the instructions. And this assignment is all about presentation feedback. All right, so it is definitely important that you guys are open to receiving constructive feedback and that you also learn how to give constructive feedback, all right? Just telling someone they did a great job on something, it doesn't help them grow. It doesn't help them learn. It's so generic. It doesn't move them forward in the process. And that's what feedback is all about, learning and growing and developing your skill to move to the next level. It's a huge part of my job as an instructor to give you constructive feedback, to tell you specific things on what you're doing well and specific things on what could be improved and also how you can improve upon that, okay? Because you're always striving to keep moving forward. If you become stagnant and not growing, that's not helping you at all in your careers and in your time as a student here, okay? So feedback is going to be essential, and that's why we are doing this assignment. So on page 2 of the instructions, this is really kind of a three-step process, if you will. So I'm going to kind of come down here to the bottom on the left column and talk about the instructions. So step 1 is that you are going to watch 3 final brand yourself presentations. These are student presentations, students that have been at Full Sail. They're not currently in class with you or anything, but these are past presentations, and those links are provided within the instruction pages. You can see over on the right with the arrow pointing there, there's a link to presentation 1, 2, and 3. So I'd like you to watch all 3 of them, but really, figure out which one really speaks to you the most, which one really resonates with you the most. So think about how each presentation successfully, or maybe not successfully, persuaded you of its true message, and then you're only going to choose one to review and analyze, all right? You're going to analyze all aspects of the presentation, not just the performance of the presenter. So you're going to be thinking about, yes, of course, the delivery, but the content as well, the visual aspect, the verbal delivery, all of those items here. So yes, you're going to watch all 3, but you're just going to choose one of the 3 presentations to review and analyze. So the analysis questions are the prompts, and I do expect that you address all of these prompts that are listed here in your analysis. So number 1, what specifically did you like about this presentation, and offer a brief explanation as to why? At number 2, which part of the presentation was most difficult to follow? Explain and offer some suggestions on how they could improve here. That's a huge part of feedback, is offering suggestions for improvement. At number 3, based on what you've learned this month in CRP, what advice do you have for the presenter in their final submission? Number 4, what specific techniques, skills, and qualities from the course materials did this presentation exemplify? And then finally, we talked about this a little bit last week, which of the 3 pillars does the presentation appeal? To ethos, pathos, or logos, and explain why. So all of those prompts need to be addressed in your analysis. So moving to the next page, you're going to create a document containing an analysis of all aspects of that presentation using those questions in step 1 that I just reviewed as a guide to provide feedback about the speaker's techniques, okay? You'll also provide feedback for the content, explaining what you think worked well and what you think did not work well, all right? So you need to think about those prompts and items for feedback that you could give. Finally, step number 3, and I will say a lot of students forget this step, so please don't forget this one as you complete the assignment. So after you've analyzed and addressed all those prompts from the previous page, you need to add a final paragraph reflecting upon your thoughts about feedback, how it's affected yourself. How might this process inform your critique and feedback process about your own work? So reflect on how you've been coming along in your own presentation process over this last week, all right? So you need to be sure you've completed steps 1, 2, and 3 of this assignment in order to get full credit. Here's just a brief recap here. So the 4.3 assignment, again, it's 10% of your grade. This will take place of our discussion post this week. So you really just need to submit this. There won't be a discussion this week. James is asking, can this be added to the same document? James, nice question. I would like this to be one solid, cohesive document. So it will be the analysis prompts and questions, and then that recap, final thought about how feedback is affecting you personally with your own work. So I would like it to be one document. So step 1, consider the prompts in step 1 concerning just one of the 3 video choices. Again, guys, you don't have to do this for all 3 videos, just choose one of them. All right, so provide feedback using the prompts in step 1 and make sure you move through all of those prompts. And then finally in step 3, reflect on how feedback from others' presentations can benefit your own work, all right? So you need to be sure you're including all of that. So let me talk to you about the grading for this assignment. So this is going to be more so of a quote unquote pass-fail assignment. So I'm going to be grading on a scale of either 100, 75, or 0, all right? So if you get a 100 on the assignment, that means that you have thoroughly addressed all of the prompts and completed all 3 steps of this assignment, okay? Everything is done thoroughly. You've used the RISE model. You've addressed all of the prompts. Everything is completely done. If you are assigned a 75, it means you're missing a step, or maybe the RISE model has not been used. Remember the RISE model. It's all about inquiring and raising everyone up to the next level. If you do not make a submission, there will be a 0, no exceptions on this one. You guys are moving into your next class. I am starting my next class of probably about 75 brand new people. So it needs to be submitted. It needs to be submitted on time, and that's going to be this Sunday, July 30th. I think it's, yes, July 30th by 11:59 p.m. So Megan is asking a question. So we can't just write it in the discussion. It has to be a Word document. Megan, yeah, there isn't going to be a discussion here. It needs to be a document of some sort. If you wanted to do it in PowerPoint, that's fine. I would suggest a Word document. I think that's probably easiest for this particular assignment. But if you perhaps wanted to add some visuals to it, you could also do that as well. But it doesn't it doesn't, I believe I don't believe it gives you the option of actually writing it out there. It needs to be a file that you're uploading for this one. Maybe I might be wrong about that. Does that answer your question, Megan? Okay, great. Thank you. All right, guys. So that is really, like I said, I'm not going to be using the grading rubric that's attached to this assignment. I'm going to be using that grading scale. It's either going to get a 100, a 75, or a 0 with no exceptions to it. So if you're late, if you miss the deadline, I will not be extending it for this particular assignment. It needs to be completed. So don't forget this one. It is 10% of your grade. So it's going to be one that really can kind of move you from one step to, or one grading level to another. Antoinette, I'm sorry, you can go ahead and watch the recorded version. I see that you said you missed the beginning. You can view the recorded version and just watch that beginning part instead of me just repeating it all over again. So I'll post that shortly after we conclude tonight. All right, guys, so let's move into the last assignment of the week, the big final brand yourself presentation, the one that you're all working towards. And I've received a lot of your first drafts, of course, today. I've started grading those, and you will be receiving audio feedback from me. So I'll be recording myself talking to you and giving you my verbal feedback. Okay, so when you receive the grade, you'll receive a rubric file and then also an audio file of me talking to you, just kind of giving you advice on how you can improve yourself and this presentation before the final assignment is due. All right, so let's talk about this. And a lot of this is going to be just you guys taking my feedback and hopefully giving and receiving peer feedback throughout the week. And each of your recordings, you probably will hear me say, if you haven't done so already, please post your first draft file to the week 3 discussion board. Remember, that one is going to remain open through the end of the course. So that's a great way for you guys to interact with each other and get some valuable peer feedback from each other. So I highly suggest, while you're still waiting on me to grade, remember I do have 75. It does take me a little bit of time to get it back to you. But in the meantime, definitely just get feedback from any resource that you can, and your classmates are going to be a great resource there. All right, so the big thing that I need to make sure that I am very clear about is the fact that there must be changes from your first draft moving into your final draft in order to receive any credit for this presentation. So if you happen to, submit your first draft and then you say, hey, I'm not going to make any changes, I'm just going to submit my first draft as my final draft, you're not going to get any credit. Okay, you can't submit the same file twice. So I do remember a lot of these. I do compare the first one and the last one. So you do need to be sure that you're taking my feedback and you're making changes between the two assignments, the first draft and the final draft. I just want to be very, very clear on that one. I would hate for anyone to not receive credit because there was some kind of a miscommunication. So that needs to be very clearly stated. All right, so some of the most Isaac, let me just pause for a minute. Isaac, so we have to submit both of them. Isaac, no. When you come into Sunday, which is the due date for the 4.4 assignment, you will just be submitting your final draft of the presentation. I can go back and access your first draft from week 3, and if I feel like this is really familiar, I think I've seen this just almost exactly the first time around, I'll go and compare them. And if they're identical, it means you're just submitting your first draft as your final draft, and there must be changes. So no, you don't have to submit both. For the final draft, you just submit your final version of the presentation. So, okay, good. You're clear on that one, Isaac. Great. All right, so a couple of the issues that I commonly see that I think that you should be aware of and handle before you turn in the final draft, okay? First is going to be a monotone voice. Guys, we've been working on our voices since week 2 with the emotional storytelling assignment and the discussion there. So absolutely, I'm expecting you to incorporate all of the HAIL method items into this presentation, as well as those vocal toolbox items. This should be something that is high energy, that is enthusiastic, that is upbeat and professional. So your voice should really reflect those items. Now, some of you guys did talk about more solemn type of emotional connections back in week 2. So that kind of mood wouldn't necessarily be something that you bring into a professional and polished presentation for a potential employer, okay? So you want to be sure that you're using the power of your voice to resonate with your audience. If you're not excited about your presentation, chances are your audience isn't going to be excited about your presentation, and your way of connecting with them is really strongly related to your voice in this presentation. Images. All right. So images. Ben was just bringing up about how, images is something that kind of just poses a bit of a challenge for him. And I'm sure a lot of you guys feel the same way, but you want to be sure that you're using those images to enhance the presentation. All right. You want to be sure that those images are absolutely related to the content that you're talking about, that they are emotionally impactful, and they're also high resolution. Okay, I do see a lot of times some low resolution photo images that get very pixelated. So you want this to be very crisp and very clear, especially with the visual aspect of that presentation. Breaking the apple rule. So this happens quite a bit, usually in week 3, moving into week 4, where some students might put their entire script on their slides and they're reading the script almost word for word. Okay, and that's what we call breaking that apple rule. So you want to be sure you're avoiding breaking the apple rule. Okay, you're verbally telling your story. You do not also need to put the words on the screen. You don't need to read word for word your presentation to the audience. They can read. They're there to watch you deliver your information and listen to you and let those images enhance the verbal message. Okay, so be sure not to break that apple rule. Music. Be sure that you are not in competition, that your voice is the absolute central focus of this presentation. So if you have background music, which I definitely encourage you to use, but you need to keep in mind that it should not have any words, it shouldn't have lyrics, and it shouldn't be too loud. I have gotten a couple of first draft submissions where the volume is just too loud and I can't hear the speaker, so there has to be an adjustment with the volume there. So when you're considering background music, be sure that it is not taking away any of the focus. It's not competing with your own voice. Okay, also the timing of it. Is it too short or too long? All right, remember that the final draft must be between 3 to 4 minutes long. If you are only at 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes in the first draft, I'm going to say you need more content. You need more content to fill that amount of time. If you're at 4.5, 5, 6, 7 minutes, you obviously need to condense. You need to make some edits and cut some of your content, okay? 3 to 4 minutes is going to be the absolute start and minimum and maximum time for this particular presentation. Some of the instructors here, after 4.5 minutes, they shut it off. And they don't listen to the remainder of it. So that could be, you could have some instructors that kind of go to that extreme. I will continue listening, but it will definitely count against you, which is unfortunate. So be sure that you're making it include, the speaking time is within that 3 to 4 minutes. I am seeing some questions come up, so I'll readdress those at the very end of this discussion, guys. I am seeing them, though. I'm not ignoring you guys. So next, you need to be sure that you have a clear audience. So we have talked about our audience from day number 1, week number 1, about a month ago. You guys need to be sure that you are explicitly addressing your audience. You need to do that by saying who they are, maybe having a visual representation using their logo. You need to make a very impactful connection with your audience quickly, and by doing so at the beginning of the presentation. If you haven't connected with your audience, that's a lot taken off for the grading rubric, which I'll show you in a little bit. But make sure that that audience is very clear. I need to know who it is that you're speaking to. Also keep in mind that you are speaking directly to them. not about them. So you don't need to go and tell the company all about themselves as if you're giving a report. You need to make sure that you're using all of that great research information and you're using that in order to connect with them. So pretend that yes, pretend that you have gone through your entire degree program and for one aspect of it, but also pretend that you're talking directly to your audience for the purposes of this assignment. Okay, so be sure you have a very clear audience. At the end of the presentation, you need to have a clear call to action. You need to very explicitly state what exactly you want your audience to do as a result of this presentation. More than likely, it's going to be that you're requesting that they reach out to you, that they call you, that they invite you in for an invitation or a further conversation, whatever it happens to be. Be explicit about that. Your audience should not have any question about what to do next, okay? So you need to tell them that. Also, if you do that, I would suggest, and you'll probably hear this with my feedback, that you provide all of the ways to get in touch with you visually, okay? So provide a slide at the end of your presentation showing, a recap of your name, your social media contacts if you wanted to provide that, your phone number, your email. So provide them a visual means of contacting you if you choose to do so. And then lastly, you need to give your references, all right? So a credit screen, something at the end of the presentation that shows where you're pulling your information from, all right? Again, if it's not your own personal work or something that you've created, you need to give credit where credit is due and give the references, all right? So let me stop here and address the questions that have already come through the chat box, all right? Okay, hold on one second. James is asking, do you need to cite the images? Yes, James. So if you're using images that are not your own, you do need to cite them. Okay, Tony Ann is asking, does that include the credits? I think, Tony Ann, you're referencing the timing. I think I saw that question come up regarding the timing. So with the timing, I am really starting it from when you begin speaking to when you end speaking. If you've got a couple extra seconds over with the credits, that won't cause you to go over. But if you're continuing to speak and deliver the presentation, that is where the timing will count against you. So if that didn't clarify that answer, Tony, and let me just let me know. And James, you're asking, can we reference them twice? James, reference exactly what twice? You mean the audience? Yes. Okay. Yes. So I would say, James, yes, absolutely make that connection at the very beginning, but continue to address them throughout the presentation. And you can do that verbally and you can do that non-verbally. Some of you guys are pitching yourselves to different gaming companies, and some of the images that you're using are games that they have created. That's continuing to make a connection. You're doing so non-verbally, but you are continuing to make that connection with that audience by referencing items that they've created or something that you have a link to. So definitely continue to make that connection and establish that from beginning to end. Andrew's saying we have to include them in the presentation. Those can't be added. Andrew, I'm fine if you wanted to add a separate Word document with the link there. It's going to be up to you how you want to present your references. If you wanted to do so at the end of your presentation, that's fine. If you want to provide a separate Word document, I'm also fine with that. So you have a couple options there. Okay, Isaac is saying, where did it go? Isaac is saying, so on this assignment, can I use the same stuff but putting myself like if I graduated? So Isaac, I remember seeing your presentation today, and you mentioned how you are currently a student at Full Sail. I would prefer that you are taking this from the position that you're a recent graduate. You have already moved through your degree program and you're at the next phase of pitching yourself to a particular company. So that will ask you to go back and do some research into your degree program and seeing some of those specific classes and skills and things you will have learned during that time, as opposed to you're still moving through that program. So that's the perspective that I would like you to take, and really, bring in some particulars and bring in some specifics about what it is that you've learned and how you're qualified for that position. Okay, guys, any other questions at this point about the final presentation that I can address? Okay, great. I'm glad you're clear, Isaac. Good. All right, so I'm going to keep moving on. If you have something come up, just let me know, and I'll come back and check on you guys. So for the submission instructions, again, this is very similar to what you've done for the first draft. So if you have created something online, a lot of you guys are using Adobe Spark, which is fantastic. I'm glad to see that. You're going to have a link to provide, okay? You're not going to have a file to necessarily upload. If you've created something on YouTube, you're going to have a link and not a file to upload. So again, you need to create that Word document with your name and the URL of the website so I can go out and view that presentation. Be sure that if you're using something where there's some privacy options, be sure that it is either public or unlisted and not set to private. I hate to have to come and bug you again. Can you please open it back up and this and that? So be sure that you have things set to where I am able to view them on my side. If you guys are using Keynote or PowerPoint or another application that allows you to upload a file, you can just pull that into the drag and drop area, and keep in mind it must be an auto play. I should be able to just open the file and it plays from beginning to end, okay? Kind of a push to play format. If you're having struggles with that, please don't hesitate to reach out to FSO support. They should be able to help you with that. There's Lynda tutorials, Google searches, all of those things. They're pretty easy to do, but if you've not used them, you might just need someone to help walk you through that. So those are the ways that you guys will submit your final presentation, which shouldn't be much different than what you've done this last week. So let me talk about this rubric for the 4.4 assignment. All right, so this is the rubric for the final assignment, or the final presentation. It's 2 pages, and there are 6 different dimensions that I'm grading you, okay? Again, the range is the same: exemplary, accomplished, developing, or beginning. All right, so let me go through page 1 and then page 2 of the rubric so we're very clear on the grading aspect. So for the content, I'm looking to be sure that you have met all of the requirements of the assignment, that you've addressed your content thoroughly, and that your presentation displays a strong example of structure and basic slide design skills, all right? So what does that mean? Did you address all of the project requirements? Is there a clear audience? Do you have an organized flow of information, a clear beginning, middle, and end? Do you have a call to action at the end? Are your visuals enhancing your message? All right, so that's kind of the overall project requirements. Are you within the time frame? That's actually going to come in at the end here too. But that is going to be what I'm talking about with the content. With the critical thinking, is your information, can I tell that you've done some research about your audience? Have you done the research about your degree program? Is it detailed? Is it in depth? Is it well supported? Do you really kind of demonstrate a deeper insight into the topics that you've brought up? So really the question is, are you detailed or are you vague when you're explaining your presentation flow, okay? And obviously I would rather you be much more detailed than just kind of give vague, I'm a go-getter. I love working with this company and I would do all of the work on time. And those are kind of just vague things that a lot of people say in an interview. I want you to specifically tell me in depth why you're qualified for this position here and what it is that you're going to bring to that company, okay? So think details. Relevance, this is the third category. Is the content directly related to the course materials? Are you going back and talking about the concepts that we've discussed this month? Are you using the best practices for slide design? Are you bringing about the ideas of ethos, logos, and pathos? Is your audience clearly the hero? Are you branding yourself throughout the entire presentation? All right, so those are the things that I'm looking for to get that exemplary column. So here's the second page. All right, so this one is having to do with mechanics. So you need to be sure that you're using professional language, you're avoiding slang or derogatory terms, that the slides are free of spelling and grammar errors. I do see that quite a bit. And be sure you're absolutely not spelling the name of the company incorrect, all right? So, go through with a real critical eye and be sure that you're using professional and correct grammar, spelling, all of that is going to count in here. So slide design. Make sure that your presentation uses best practices for the slide design. You've got clear and readable text if you're incorporating text into the slides, and make sure that the components enhance the main points of the presentation. Be sure that your visuals are appealing. Make sure that they are high quality, high resolution, that you're avoiding that visual vertigo that we talked about last week, that you're keeping consistency with your colors, your color scheme, your fonts, and the images and the formatting. All right, you want to keep all of that very neat, clean, and simplistic so that your audience can absorb that visual information. And then lastly, you're looking for the delivery. You're looking for the incorporation of that hail method, okay? You're really displaying a lot of confidence, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, clear articulation of your words as you're speaking, all right? There's also this section at the very bottom that the presentation length is within the allotted time. The allotted time, again, is 3 to 4 minutes. So if you delivered a dynamic verbal delivery, but your presentation was 5 minutes long, I can't give you that exemplary category. I'd have to go down to the beginning category, which pains me to do that because I really want you to stick to that time frame, and I'm really looking at that powerful vocal delivery, okay? So guys, aim for that exemplary column. Go through after you've completed your final project and be sure, use this as a checklist. This is what I'm using to grade you. So be sure that you can check off all of these columns and you're not missing anything, all right? So that's how I'm grading you guys. I'll of course give you some feedback when it's all said and done, but this is going to be due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, July 30th. Okay, that's our final day of the course. So I will address any other questions. Antoinette, I'm seeing the question, what is the final project about? We might need to talk and have just a conversation on the side. Really, it's going to be everything that we've worked up to this point. So it's going to be what you've been working on about branding yourself and pitching yourself to a company. Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything come through, so I have one final thing to talk with you guys about before we break for the night. All right, so this is something that's called your portfolio competency. It's a self-reflection. Yes, James, you're saying that right now. I'm looking back in the chat box and Latoria is saying, Latoria, I'll come back to your question in a moment. So let me go through this here. This is your final self-reflection of the course. I would say get through making sure that you've done the 4.3 and the 4.4 assignment first, and then really kind of come back to this just to really make it all come full circle. Reflect on what you've been through after you've actually been through the entire course here. So you can see that it doesn't have a weight. It has a 0% weight, but it does impact your professionalism score. So remember, back in week 1, you guys completed the professionalism activity, and you all started out with 100 as long as you completed that activity. If you haven't completed that, you need to get in touch with me very, very quickly. But if you don't complete this, it will have an impact on your professionalism score. So it'll deduct a couple of points there, and I hate having to do that as well. But this is a great time to really reflect on this entire course, okay? And all of your courses, I believe, will ask you to do this. So here are some questions that I want you to consider in your reflection. All right, so what did you expect from the creative presentation course? And did this class meet your expectations? Explain your answers. This is kind of back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of our session tonight. Next, what is your biggest takeaway from this course? Third, how well have you met the requirements of this class? And what are you especially proud of? What would you do differently if you could start it all over again? So talk about those items. And then lastly, how do you think that the skills you learned in this class will help you in your remaining classes and in achieving your ultimate goals. So those are the reflection questions I will ask you to complete for this self-reflection. It does need to be completed in a short essay format, no specific word count or anything, but just be sure that you've addressed all 4 of these prompts thoroughly within your responses, okay? So I'll be looking at those probably midweek next week after I've graded everything else. That's usually the last thing that I come to. So be sure that you've completed that also by Sunday. Yes, a Word document, James. And Latoria, so I'm coming back to your question. You think your delivery was directed to the wrong group. So Latoria, I will go ahead and be sure that I take a look at your first draft either tonight or first thing in the morning and get you my feedback since you're asking about that. But I would like to see it specifically. So once we finish the session, I'll be back to you either tonight or in the morning. Hopefully that works for you. All right, guys, any other questions about any of the assignments due this week at all? The portfolio competency, the 4.4, or the 4.3 assignment? Anything that I can address for you guys before we wrap up for the night? Okay, Megan, your 4.3 assignment is due Sunday. So everything this week is due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Ben, you're right. I think you're going to get a lot of very specific feedback from your first draft assignments. Just be patient with me. It does take a while to get through these and provide the feedback, but I will be getting back to you guys. Absolutely. Isaac, yes, you did mention to me about the due dates, and I did open everything up for you early, as we talked about. Brittany, okay, would I prefer the essays be double spaced? I don't really honestly have a preference with that as long as it's large enough for me to read, but I can easily kind of revise the spacing as needed. So just make sure, especially with the self-reflection, that everything is addressed. Also with the 4.3 assignment, make sure all of the prompts are addressed in order to get the full credit. Ben, you're saying you're feeling like you have a lot of room for improvement. And that's what it's meant to be. It's really just meant to be, just get that first draft, out of the planning phase and into the production phase. And of course, there's going to be room for growth. So I think a lot of you guys this week, keep working on it on your own and making those tweaks as you go. But some of you, there is going to be a lot of shifting that happens, and that's supposed to happen, and that's great. You're able to take the feedback in and grow from that, and that's exactly what you want to do. So anything else that I can address for you guys about these assignments in this last week? All right, I'm going to have this last slide here, and then I'll kind of leave it open for a couple of minutes in case anybody wants to chat or anything does come up. So lastly, guys, so I want to just say kind of in my final thoughts for you all, it's been a great pleasure getting to know you guys. I feel like it just goes by so fast, and I start to get to know you and boom, you're gone. And it's tough, but I love keeping track and keeping in touch with you guys. So I highly, highly ask you and invite you to stay in touch with me, whether that be, through the Full Sail, the avenues to Full Sail, either the email or the platform, or if you wanted to find me on social media, I am out there. I'm happy to keep in touch with you guys on a social basis that way too. I really think that's fun to see where you guys are at. I do keep up with a lot of my students that way, and it's fantastic. But you really can just think about, the power of communication and networking and all of the things that we've learned here. But communication is my passion, and that's what I really love. So hopefully that's come through in the things that I've taught you this month. So I think that effective communication of your thoughts and your ideas is really going to be one of the major keys to your success, not only in your personal life, or your professional life, but in your personal life as well. So keep refining those skills and keep honing them, especially your networking skills as well, communicating with those in the environment that you're in right now, and stay in touch with people, especially as you move through your degree programs, okay? So I really had a great pleasure in getting to know you guys this month, and I do wish you all the very best as you continue to move through your time here at Full Sail. And if you ever need anything, I actually had a student reach out to me the other day. He's like, I'm having trouble finding a specific person, and I said, hey, let me help you out with that. So let me be a resource for you as well. I'll try and help you as best I can. But I do wish you guys the best of luck as you keep moving through your time at Full Sail. So I and Isaac is saying you need to keep in touch with your classmates. Absolutely, guys. You never know who's in class with you, who is going to be that next connection point that will take you to the next phase. Normally that happens through your networking and your connections. So definitely it's been a wonderful month, and I'm really going to be working hard this week to get that feedback to you as quickly as I can. So I'm glad I didn't lose power tonight. I didn't lose you guys. So I will leave the floor open to you all until you're content and you're happy. If you don't have any questions, you're free to go, and it's been a wonderful pleasure getting to know you. But if you want to stay in the session for a little bit, I'm happy to address your questions. So I'm going to stop the recording, but we can go ahead and leave the session open. So thank you guys.